Hi, and welcome to episode 38 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. Today is Sunday the 26th of June 2016, and my name is Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown on Instagram, Ravelry, Pinterest, and it's also the name of my Etsy shop. It's lovely to have your company, and I hope you enjoy the show. We have a local knit-along running in the Ravelry group at the moment, which is encouraging people to try out local to them yarns, indie dyes and pattern designers. So if you are working on anything like that, then please pop by the group and have a look at the local knit-along threads. We have, I think, 18 finished objects so far in the finished objects thread, and that will be open for 2 more weeks until the 9th of July. The random winner from the finished objects will receive these 2 balls of Adagio Mills 4-ply alpaca yarn, and these are from a mill near to me. And the random winner from the chatter thread will receive these 2 balls of Cleckheaton Country 8-ply. So if you have any questions about the knit along, then please pop by the chatter thread and pop them in there, or contact me on Ravelry. I've also decided to continue the 20% off discount code for the Give Me a Crown Etsy shop until the end of financial year. Seeing as it was an end of financial year promotion, seems to make sense to run it until the 30th of June. I think there are 30 days in June. There are, aren't there? Anyway, the last day of June is when I'll disable that discount code, so you can use GMAC podcast 20 and you'll get 20% off item prices in the shop. Thank you to those of you who have given me some fantastic feedback in the past week about my breathing space pullover. I had comments on Instagram, Ravelry and YouTube, and people seemed to really like the finished pullover, so it was lovely to hear such positive comments on it. This week's episode is going to have some knitting and spinning. There's not a huge amount, so it might be a shorter episode than normal, but let's see how we go. So as a finished object, I've been doing some spinning. Last week I showed some fuzzling that I was spinning up on my drop spindle. So I finished spinning up that single, and then I popped it on my wheel to do a Navajo or chain ply, which effectively creates a 3-ply yarn. And this is how it turned out. So there's some blues and some greens, and then some sparkly bits in there. So I'm kind of happy with how this turned out. The yarn itself seems to be fairly balanced. Yeah. So that was a fun little spin. I don't know yet what I will do with this particular one, but time will tell. I then decided to try a bit of, is it long draw or long draft? Long draw, I think, where you pull the fibre supply backwards, and I did it with another fuzzling, and then I Navajo plied that, and it wasn't as successful, which I think is mainly down to the fact that the fibre prep isn't what would be ideal for that type of technique, but it's okay. There are areas where I think that I've either put too much twist into the single or I've over applied it, but I'm thinking about putting it back through the spinning wheel and then removing some of the twist from the plying and seeing if that works, considering it's a Navajo ply or a chain ply. I'm not sure how it will affect it, but we'll see. I also had some other fibre that I just decided to play around with, so these were a few more just tiny bumps that I tried the long draw technique with, and then another one which I did a a short forward draw, but trying to create a thicker yarn, and again Navajo plying it. So it was a little bit more successful, but still kind of lumpy bumpy, and I think that's just down to the fact that I'm using the wrong kind of preparation of fibre. But I've been playing with those because I've got some new fibre coming soon, possibly in time for next week's episode, so it would be nice to spin up a full braid with a different technique. But if I'm not confident, then my light just went out. Hold on. Okay, so this seems to be the story of my week, with things exploding and falling apart. So one of my lights has died by the looks of it, but I'll soldier on with the light that's left and we'll see how we go. I have been working on a few projects. I think that's where I was up to, sorry. My newborn vertebrae has not had a great deal of work on it. I worked on it, I think, after recording last week, and I got a little bit further along. It's about that tall now, and then all sorts of things happened, so I haven't worked on it. I'm not entirely sure if I'm in love with it, but I'll have to have a bit of a think and decide whether or not I continue with it or whether I cast on a different project. I've also been working on my hand spun socks. So last week I was working on the first sock, which I've now finished, and this is how it looks. So I continued up the leg and then did a 2x2 ribbing cuff, and then I just did a standard bind off, just making sure that I did it loosely. I wasn't in the mood to do anything particularly complicated. But so that's the first sock, and I've been working on the second sock. So I continued off with where I was in the yarn ball with this toe and hit a particularly green section, and then it's gone back into the purples, and I'm now on the leg. I've got a little bit further to go before I can do the cuff. One of the things that I noticed was, because I was wondering whether or not to cast on with the second ball of yarn for this one, I realised that the tail end of my first ball matched up with one of the tail ends of the second skein or ball. So it was a skein, and then I balled it up so that I could continue on with where I had been, if that makes sense. So I didn't have to sort of have a particular change in colour as I was working along from one ball to the next. So it means that I can, rather than having two half balls, I'll have sort of the leftovers of this one once I'm done. I did the Sock Mortician's Toe Ups heel section for this one as well, and I spoke a fair bit about it last week. On my second time around, I was less confused than the first time, but I somehow managed to lose a couple of stitches. I had the wrong stitch count by the time I finished the heel, and so I ended up having to add a couple of stitches on the leg so that I wouldn't end up having a skinnier leg. I'm not sure how I lost those stitches, but it's possibly just to do with how I was feeling when I was knitting it. So one of the good things about this particular heel is that you don't have to pick up any stitches. So if you're knitting top down or cuff down, then with a gusset heel like this, you usually have to pick up the stitches along the edge. But when you're doing this particular heel, at least, you don't need to do that. So it's a bit of a time saver in that respect, but it still is a little bit fiddly. I'm using the Zing needles, and I've heard mixed reactions. Quite a lot of people love them. I'm finding that on stockinette, so just on the plain knitting, they're working really well, but when I got up to the ribbing, I found that the needle tips are a little bit blunt for my liking for this particular yarn. So I think it really depends on how tightly I'm knitting and what kind of stitches I'm making. But for the Norwegian pearl, which I do, I found them a little bit fiddly, and my stitches want to sort of hop off too quickly with this particular hand spun yarn. So that's that. I think that's it for those socks. And then I have been adding a couple of squares on my sock yarn blanket. So I currently have a needle in here because I thought that I would get another square added, but I don't know if you'll be able to guess, but I've added in these 2 squares. So these are the ones that I use for my breathing space. So there's a bear in there, and dappled pony, the dappled pony, or confetti covered pony as I called it. I really like how it turned up as a sort of a knitted garter swatch, and they're going to remind me forever about my love for Miss Click Clack yarns. But they're not the first Miss Click Clacks that I've got in there. I've got some more further down over there somewhere. They're in there. So yep, I want to keep adding to my blanket and just snuggle underneath it at the moment because the weather has been cold. So that's it for my projects. I will get on to chatter, so if you're not interested, then thank you very much for watching, and I'm sorry that it's been such a short little episode, but hopefully soon I will get a few more things on the go and have more knitting and spinning to chatter about, and next week I'll have some acquisitions hopefully. So, but yep, so if you're not interested, then thank you. For those who are interested, it's been a wild weathery week over here in the central west of New South Wales. I waited for snow and the snow didn't turn up, which was very, very sad, but snow sort of fell about 50 kilometres away in Orange and Bathurst, and we have been promised snow tonight, so we'll see what happens. I really wanted to get some snow footage of the birds, but it wasn't to be. It just kept raining and raining and raining and raining, and raining so much that the roof sprung a leak. So I've been having the joys of trying to rescue things that first of all got soaked, and then trying to figure out what to do about a roof leak, and carting cold water out of the house while I've been cold. And so I think I've ended up with frostbite on a couple of my fingers, which hasn't been fun. It's hard to tell whether or not the roof leak is due to the massive powerful winds that we've been having or not, so trying to figure out. First of all, I had to wait for it to dry off, and I've been investigating, and I think I have to get up onto the roof, and I don't think I'm willing to do that without somebody else being here to watch so that I don't fall off. So might need to get myself a handyman to come and fix what's going on, unless it just stops without the crazy wind pushing the rain sideways. But so I had that yesterday. The TV decided to lose half its channels. Today one of my lights is broken. So I've probably been whinging too much, and it's caused a million things all to go wrong at once, but that's what happens sometimes. So on the plus side, I went to the local markets this morning. So it was the first time that they'd run the markets at the Sunny Ridge Golf Club, and they're planning to do it every 3 months. So it was fun to go and check that out. It was fairly early on, so there weren't too many people there yet. But there were about 20 different stalls of people selling handmade goods, food, sort of all sorts of general stuff, which is it's nice to see that in comparison to the farmers market that I went to in Blaney the other week, because I want to I like looking at other things than just food. So food markets are good now and then, but I also want the other kind of markets. So I picked up a couple of little things. So there was a soap maker, simplysoap.com.au, and I bought this Lily of the Valley olive oil soap, and it smells amazing, and it's got little glittery things on top. It looks very edible. And she also had these little guest soap things, so it has a bunch of different soaps from her in little bars, so you can try out the different flavors. So that is a very local to me maker, and it was fun to meet her and a few of the other local makers. So yeah, I've now got a market that's only a couple of kilometres away, so that's a nice thing. I did not envy them sitting there when it's only a few degrees above zero. So there were quite a few people rugged up, and some had actually bought their own little camp heater. I don't know what they're called, those sort of round things that you put wood in and to heat up, and they were using one of those to stay warm. So I'm sure that as the afternoon rolled on and the temperatures crept up a few more degrees, there were more people there. But yeah, it was lovely to see, and I'll definitely go along next time as well. I have also been stalking the birds. I managed to get a little bit of footage of a galah the other day. It was only on my mobile. I didn't have a chance to get my digital SLR camera out in time, but that was there. And just before I started recording, I spotted a different parrot. So it was a greeny parrot with a orangey red chest. So I haven't had a chance to check what type of bird it is yet, but I'll put a bit of footage in at the end, and if I've managed to find out the name, then I'll put the name in under the video. And that's it. Short and sweet, but hopefully the next week goes a lot smoother than the past week has been. But we'll see what happens once it starts snowing and country life. It's definitely turned out to be a lot more adventurous than I expected, but yeah, I'm itching to cast on a lot of things, but I just can't quite decide what I want to do. And when I've had a sore hand and I've just stock a net. That's been pretty easy to do, but I would like to get a few more things on the go so that I've got some exciting things to show you guys. With that, I'll leave you. I hope that you're having a much better time with winter or summer in the north than what I'm having here. But you've got to stay positive. Got to look forward to the next good thing that's just around the corner. So I'll see you soon.